All people are aware of class. To them, society is made up of the rich, the middle, and the poor.
The one thing that all three classes don't understand is that the pyramid continues upward. There is a detached hidden capstone made up of an elite board of directors who own and manage Aluma Corp. The three classes below, in essence, become the assets and resources of Aluma Corp. Aluma Corp is divided into various administrative branches, but each branch has the same 5 levels in their hierarchy. You will begin at the bottom, in the initiate category. As such, your role will be to make sure that your orders are carried out through the sub-corporations and institutions controlled by Aluma Corp.
You will be placed in plain sight, at the head of a company or institution in the public sector, to carry out the plans delivered from above. Remember, your role is very important. You will be the face of Aluma Corp to the outside world. You are our connection to the masses below. Never speak publicly about your orders or your masters. Now let's look at Aluma Corp's 6 administrative branches and their functions. You will be placed in a top position of power among one of the following sectors. In this way, as you are monitored and guided from above, you will decide strategy and introduce programs that further our goals. For that is the secret to Aluma Corp's success. Control the head, and you control the body. This is potentially Aluma Corp's most effective instrument for global control. Through international banking, we manipulate the fate of all countries. We have introduced many institutions, such as the IMF and WTO, that work in our favor to impoverish disobedient nations. Always remember, debt is a powerful weapon against countries that don't share Aluma Corp's vision.
Perhaps our greatest achievement in banking is the Federal Reserve System. It is a collection of international banks owned by Aluma Corp members and financiers. It was created to form a centralized banking system through the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, an act that was indeed penned by some of our most esteemed members. Many of you might still assume that the government itself prints and issues the currency. That is not the case. When America needs money, they go to our boys and ask for it. The money is printed, but it is only representative of a loan. Interest accrues on that dollar until it is paid back to the Fed. In fact, the federal taxes paid by the American population go almost entirely to paying off this debt. So you see, Aluma Corp derives a healthy amount of its operation funding directly from the debt of the public. Needless to say, this is one of our most crucial sources of funding, and one of our proudest achievements here at Aluma Corp. Through mergers and acquisitions, we have slowly and silently bought up the majority of U.S. industry. Aluma Corp and its members own most of the oil, transport, banking, media, food and communications industries in America and abroad. Through fewer and fewer conglomerates, we are able to effect with great precision the machinations of labor and government.
Ultimately, corporations will replace government as a centralized international body that can meet the needs of the public worldwide, without the chaos created by national self-interest. When Aluma Corp goes public, corporatism will be the foundation for world government. Conglomerates will merge into one cohesive corporation that is responsible only to Aluma Corp and the needs of its global employment force. Aluma Corp's control of the American military is another impressive tool in our possession. We have nurtured these institutions lavishly to serve as the prototype for our global police force. When ready, our technology and manpower will dominate those who oppose the coming new world order.
By utilizing American patriotism, we have fostered in the American soldier the philosophy of peace through superior force. When the time is right, we will migrate that mentality towards the belief in a global government who must protect all people through superior force. We have used the American military-industrial complex to build the arsenal necessary to instigate the final cleansing outlined in Aluma Corp's Great Plan. Our primary target will be Islamic nations who will never submit to our Western-centric domination. They also hold much of the remaining oil reserve of the planet. Aluma Corp must own that precious resource, as it is crucial in maintaining our domination over the countries of the world.
Through Aluma Corp's enormous federal funding of the military, we can develop new forms of warfare and population reduction. The public can't imagine what we were in the process of developing. Soon, even the weather will be a weapon under our control. We will be able to create droughts, floods, hurricanes, and even tsunamis with no fingerprints attached. The political system of America has been under direct control of Aluma Corp for some time. It was actually a relatively easy acquisition, and has been even easier to manage. Politicians know of our unspoken agreement, and will do anything to stay in power.
A two-party system benefits Aluma Corp, in that it reduces all issues into a black and white debate. Through media, we can play side against side, using each where necessary to support our goals. Due to a diminishing faith in the system among the public, Aluma Corp has designed a rogue candidate program to provide a voice for the dispossessed. This disperses the impetus for dissent among those who do not feel represented by our candidates and builds a database of potential dissidents.
Simply because I've been engaged in some rather delicate work on behalf of our cousins in the United States, and it's been quite a dangerous work, is that we have been exposing the biggest corruption story in the history of the world, which is basically concerns the derivatives operation. All derivatives are fraudulent finance activity. The United States moved this week onto the Basel II norms, which means that all off-balance sheet transactions are illegal, and which means that the entire derivatives sector is worth zilch. Now, the reason that the pound in your pocket is a piddly little coin, which you can't even buy the Daily Telegraph with, is precisely because this leveraging and hypothecation of fraudulent finance activity has been taking place. Now, it was originated in the bowels of what I call the US intelligence power, and the proxy name for that is the CIA, but actually we're referring to 16, possibly 18 agencies which are a subsidiary to the CIA, including the FBI. The brains behind this is Dr. Henry Kissinger, also known as Heinz. But he's a triple agent. His Soviet code name is BOR, quite well known. We don't know what his Pan-German code name is. We did not win the war. What happened was we finished Hitler off. We personalized the war, so we thought that when Hitler ceased to exist at the Wannsee conference, the Nazi intelligentsia realized that there must be a 50-50 chance that the Germans would lose the war. And so what they did was they exported their big brains to Madrid. And in 1942 they set up what they called the German Geopolitical Center. Now, the German Geopolitical Center did nothing but think about what would happen if Germany didn't succeed in taking over Europe. And in other words, it was a long-term think tank, and they developed a long-range deception strategy called Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft, European Economic Community, published in 1942 in Berlin, is enemy of its member states. The European Union is, of course, not our friend, it is our enemy, and has been all along, because its purpose is to usurp our sovereignty and take us over. And in fact, what we now have, under Heath, we handed over general powers to an unelected group in Brussels, which is a self-perpetuating situation. And the real problem with this enemy of ours is that it is on autopilot. The problem was, or has been, that the people running the criminal finance, including, of course, the criminal enterprises, and by the way, I have referred to Citibank and other very large banks in the United States as criminal enterprises for the last 2.5 years, and I'm still walking. And the reason for that is that if you go into the main courthouse in New York and you pull up Citibank, you would have to spend about 3 weeks taking down information about the court cases concerning Citibank and fraud, which are still before the court, and that's just one court. Anyway, what happened this week is that the Chinese have made available to the United States, or to the Federal Reserve, 10 metric tons of gold. It's been loaned to them. It's a sort of loan, but of course there are huge strings attached. And it's no coincidence that Hillary Clinton, who is up to her neck in this corruption, as you will know from the Clinton background. In fact, what we're talking about is a two-pronged attack on the main enemy. The main enemy, according to the Germans and the Soviets, is Britain and the United States.
I'm going to have to make a very big apology to my noble friend, the noble Lord Sassoon, because I'm about to raise a subject which I shouldn't raise, and which is going to be one which I think is now time to put on a higher awareness and to explain to the House as a whole, as I don't think they have any knowledge of. I'm sorry the noble Lord Strathclyde is not with us at the moment, because this deeply concerns him also. But for the last 20 weeks, since yesterday afternoon, I have been engaged in a very strange dialogue with the two noble lords, in the course of which I've been trying to bring to their attention the willing availability of a strange organisation which wishes to make a great deal of money available to assist the recovery of the economy in this country. For want of a better description of their name, I'll call them Foundation X. It's not their real name, but it'll do for the moment. Foundation X was introduced to me 20 weeks ago last week by a very eminent city firm, FSA controlled, by its chairman, who came to me, and its chairman said, we have this extraordinary request to assist in doing this major financial reconstruction. It's mega bucks, but we need your help to assist us in understanding whether this business is legitimate. I had the biggest put down of my life from the noble Lord Strathclyde when I told him this story first of all. He said, why you? You're not important enough to have the answer to a question like that. And he's quite right. My noble Lord, I'm not important enough, but the answer to the next question was, you haven't got the experience for it. Yes, I do. I have had one of the biggest experiences in the laundry of terrorist money and of funny money that anybody's had in the city. I've handled billions of terrorist money. Not into my pocket. The biggest terrorist client I had was the IRA, and I'm pleased to say that I managed to write off more than £1 billion of their money. I've also had extensive connections with North African terrorists, but that's of a far nastier nature, and I don't want to talk about that because that's still a security issue. I would also hasten to add, it's no use getting the police in for me, because I shall immediately call the Bank of England as my defence witness, as they put me in to deal with these problems. So the point is that I was, in the course of doing this very strange activity, I got a very interesting set of phone numbers and references which I could go to for help when I needed it. And so people in the city have known that if they want to check out anything that looks at all odd, they can come to me and I can press a few phone numbers and get a reference. And so they came to me and asked me whether I would get them a reference and a clearance on Foundation X. And for 20 weeks I've been endeavouring to do so. I myself have come to the absolute conclusion that they are completely genuine and sincere, and that they are quite directly wishing to make the United Kingdom one of the principal points for which they will use to disseminate their extraordinary great wealth into the world at this present moment as part of an attempt to seek the economic recovery of the global economy. And so I made the phone call to my noble friend Lord Strathclyde on a Sunday afternoon. I think he was sitting on his lawn, poor man. And he did the quickest ball pass I've ever seen. If England can do anything like it at Twickenham on such Saturday, we have a chance against the All Blacks. And the next thing I knew, I'd got the noble Lord Sassoon on the phone instead. And he, from the outset, took a quite right, proper defensive attitude of total scepticism and said, this possibly can't be right. In the course of the following weeks, I had, first of all, the noble Lord Sassoon said, go and talk to the Bank of England. So I phoned the Governor of the Bank of England and said, could he please check this out for me? And he came back after about 3 days and said, you can get lost. I'm not touching this with a barge pole. It's far too difficult. Take it back to the Treasury. So I did. And within another day, the noble Lord Sassoon had come back and said, this is rubbish. It can't possibly be right. So I said, well, I'm going to work more on it. And then I had a meeting with the noble Lord Strathclyde, and I actually bought one of the senior executives of Foundation X to meet Lord Strathclyde. I have to say that as first dates go, it was not a great success. Neither of them ended up by inviting the other one up for a coffee or a drink at the end of the evening, and they didn't exchange telephone numbers in order to be able to follow up the call. In fact, I found myself between a rock and a hard place, represented by both a rock and a hard place, which were totally paranoid about each other. Because the Foundation X people have got an amazing obsession with their own security. They are expecting only to be contacted by somebody equal to head of state status, or somebody who has an international security rating equal to the top 6 people in the world. And this is such a strange situation. So both the noble Lord Sassoon and the noble Lord Strathclyde both came up with what should have been an absolute killer argument as to why this could not be true and we should forget it. Noble Lord Sassoon's argument first was that these people were offering evidence, or they claimed evidence, that they had lodged £5 billion with British banks last year. And they gave dates and they gave transfer dates and the details of these transfers. And as noble Lord Sassoon said, if that was true, it would stick out like a sore thumb. You couldn't have £5 billion popping out of a bank account without it disrupting the balance sheet completely. But I remember that about the same time that those transfers were being made, the noble Lord Miners was indulging in his game of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic of the British banking community. And if he had had 3 banks at that time, which had had, say, a deficiency of £1.5 billion each, then you'd pretty well have absorbed the entire £5 billion, and you wouldn't have the sore sum stick out on this at that time, because you'd have put £1.5 billion into each of 3 banks, and you'd have lost the lot, or absorbed the lot. That would be a logical explanation. I don't know. Noble Lord Strathclyde came up with a much different argument. He said, this cannot be right. This cannot be right, because these people said at the meeting with him that they were still effectively on the gold standard from back in the 1920s, and that their entire currency holdings throughout the world, which were very large, were backed by bullion. And the noble Lord Strathclyde came back and said to me, he's had his analysts working on it, and this has to be stuff and nonsense. Because he said they had come up with a figure for the amount of bullion that would have been needed to cover their currency reserves as claimed, which would be more than the entire value of bullion that had ever been mined in the history of the world. I'm sorry, but the noble Lord Strathclyde is wrong. His analysts are wrong, because what he had done was he had tapped into the sources which are available, and there is only one definitive source for the amount of bullion that has ever been taken from the Earth's crust. And that was a National Geographic magazine article 12 years ago. And whatever figure it was that they quoted was then quoted again by 6 other sites on the internet, on Google. And so everybody's quoting one original source, and there is no other confirming authority. But if you tack into the Vatican accounts of the Vatican Bank, you come up with a claim of total bullion
Noble Lord is into his 15th minute. I wonder if he could draw his remarks to a conclusion.
The total value of the Vatican Bank reserves would claim to be more than the entire value of gold ever mined in the history of the world. Now, my point on all of this is that we have not proven any of this. Foundation X are saying at this present moment that they are prepared to put up the entire £5 billion for the funding and creation of the 3i recreation. The British government can have the entire independent management and control of it. They don't want anything to do with it. There will be no interest charged. And by the way, if the British government would like it as well, if it will help, they will be prepared to put up money for funding hospitals, schools, the building of Crossrail immediately with 17 billion transfer by Christmas if requested, and all these other things. These things can be done if wished, but we have to have a senior member of the government has to accept the invitation to a phone call to the chairman of the company concerned, Foundation X, and then we can get into business. And all I'm asking is that this is too big an issue. I'm just an aging, obsessive old peer, and I'm easily dispensable, but getting to the truth is not. And we need to know what really is happening here. My lords, we must find out the truth of this situation.
An order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Tell me what Freemasonry is.
There is a lot of people who innocently put themselves involved with this pyramid because they don't know what's happening on the levels above, which is from 30 to 33 degrees, who you can in America accede to other side orders who have then control over Freemasonry. And one of these orders is the Shriners, for example, which is very powerful in the United States and is directly under the control of Dick Cheney. And then you have obviously the Knights of Malta, who are the aristocracy of the Freemasonry. So the Knights of Malta are the ones who actually manipulate on orders of the Vatican the rest of the Freemasons in the lower ranks. And the Knights of Malta are then spiritually driven by the Jesuits, and the general of the Jesuits, Covenbach, who is in charge of this mission, which also involves the Zionist lobbies of families connected to also the aristocracy, like for example Rothschild, and we have Rockefeller, who are both Knights of the families, prominent members of Knights of Malta, and this makes them the bankiers of the Vatican. For example, I was working under direct orders of Comandante Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri. Comandante Giorgio Ugo Balestrieri is an ex-P2 member that is a current director of the Rotary Club in New York. He is a senior member in charge of the Order of the Sons of Italo-Americans, and these people are the people behind 9/11. The New World Order of the Knights of Malta, of the Gladio, of the operations like Gladio, that from stayed behind operations against the communists, which was just obviously a theater, became now a whole another theater with this Islamic fundamentalist puppet show that goes on since the end of the 70s, since 1979, when Jimmy Carter started with the show in Afghanistan. But this is, at the end of the day, the work of the devil, which is in the Vatican. In the Vatican, the Jesuit general himself gives the order to the Pope, who is himself a very questionable guy, because he's the guy who has begun this crusade to the Middle East.
It's like the Bible, just for the people, but the leadership is on a different level.
Absolutely, that's why the Illuminati exist. The Illuminati are the people with the cash, are the Warburgs, are the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the people with the cash that counts. Okay. The rest is literally nothing, because they want a war. They are making money over the war. They sell weapons, these people. And if you continue to do what you do, you're going to just help them continue with their establishing the New World Order until they microchip you. And the moment they microchip you, forget it. Once you're going to be microchipped, you can't go back. That's it. The New World Order will have full control over you. And you would be the slave of this occult system.
Discover anything myself.
It appears that there were not weapons of mass destruction.
You said you knew where they were.
I did not.
You know where they are. They're in the area around Tikrit and Baghdad and east, west, south, and north.
Well, first of all, I haven't lied. There are a lot of people who lie and get away with it.
You have said in the past that it was, quote, pretty well confirmed.
No, I never said that.
Okay. I think that is...
No, absolutely not. What I said was, it's been pretty well confirmed that he did go to Prague and he did meet with a senior official of the Iraqi intelligence service.
Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda. Secretly and without fingerprints, he could provide one of his hidden weapons to terrorists or help them develop their own.
What did Iraq have to do with what? Nothing.
The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one-world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers, and they're doing it in sections. The whole agenda is to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, you can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people. We were talking, and they started laughing. They said, Aaron, what do you think of this liberation is about? And I said, I'm pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote. You know? And he started to laugh. He said, you're an idiot. And I said, why am I an idiot? He said, let me know what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded Women's Lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He said, there were two primary reasons. And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before Women's Lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. That's what breaks up the family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them.
The pile of crap known as the Georgia Guidestones. This structure not only speaks about wiping out most of humanity off the face of the earth, but is also a representation of the mark of the beast. Now, what you see there doesn't actually seem to look as if it's anything to do with UFOs or with the Illuminati, but it is. It's to do with UFOs, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Tares, and the Nephilim. And it's also to do with the Word of